Welcome. All right. PWHL expansion draft is underway, and in a potentially surprising turn of events, the Ottawa Charge's Ashton Bell is the first player off the board. I will say this is a pick that I'm actually not super surprised about. In general, Ashton Bell, has been more of a second pairing rugged defender for has been a very rugged second pairing defender for Ottawa for the last couple of seasons. Played more of a second pairing role, but it's kind of important to look back to the 2022-2023 season, her last at the University of Minnesota Duluth, where she was a 33 point and 39 per game player. Her goal created metric would have really put her into a similar range of value as, Kayla Barnes, who we all obviously saw what she was able to accomplish in her rookie season for the Montreal Victoire. And, on that Ottawa team, they're very defense first. They're a very systemic structure team, whereas Savannah Harmon had a strong rookie year in 23-24. In 24-25, we saw a great season from Jinty Rose. Rania Savalainen went there as a defender and was successful in her in her first season there, which was great to see. But with that, with the emergence of Savalainen, who they obviously protected, and Rose, who's a UFA, but also very effective, just really good quality for Vancouver here to really build in, their third key defender on their roster behind Jakes and Thompson. But really looking at, what this means for Ottawa is losing Bell definitely hurts their structure and their ability to defend as well, but it's not the biggest possible loss. This is a team that still has Jocelyn Larocque under contract for next season. Even if they potentially lose Larocque again later in the evening, Ottawa's still going to have a strong D-core. They didn't get bruised up front really significantly either, as much as I love Danielle Serdachny. I don't see, them really feeling the loss of her as a third liner quite in the same way offensively as they felt the loss of Daryl Watts last year. And of course, Ottawa made the playoffs this past year. They went to the finals despite having one of the lowest star densities in the league. But ultimately, I think that they might get to the other side of this in a good spot. And, really like that for Ottawa. I really like this pick for Vancouver. I really like this pick for Ashton Bell. A new opportunity for such a good player is so important. And, I think her ability to potentially play for a coach that might let her be a little bit more offensively active like she was at Minnesota Duluth could be really big for her career. And I think that's one of the big things in the PWHL expansion draft that a lot of people haven't really talked about as much, because a lot of people are focused on the negatives of losing their players and losing fan favorites with the way that the rules were set up. And realistically, one of the biggest things that hasn't been talked about is opportunity, where players are getting chances like Ashton Bell to go somewhere and be successful and really play in a style that she hasn't been allowed to as consistently in the PWHL. So, really love this for Ashton Bell, and, to really double down on loving this for Ashton Bell, somebody has to fill that role, so, there's always the opportunity. Seattle's on the clock, so I will pause for a moment. Shout out Megan Turner, New Hampshire dev product. Terralova from Ottawa going second overall. Really, really surprising that Ottawa's done for the night. They're done with expansion. Their fans can go to bed. And, really tying back into what I was just saying about Ashton Bell for them is, somebody's going to come up their roster. Somebody's going to fill that role. And, they're not necessarily filling the most difficult offensive role. With Terralova departing, that becomes a little bit more difficult, as she was definitely one of the more productive defenders on that roster offensively. And again, they're both good players, so this isn't really a narrative deconstruction of any of them. But for them as a group, the challenge is going to be the challenge, where they're still going to maintain Jocelyn Larocque, clearly. But, Stephanie Markowski was a player who had a fantastic campaign in college in her draft year. Great player, giving her more opportunity and more ice time could be really significant for the Ottawa Charge in 2025, 2026. Really look forward to that for her as a solid foundational defender. But for Terralova, knowing that she is a left-handed shot, and knowing that Kayla Barnes, who's already been selected by Seattle, or signed by Seattle earlier in the week, I talk almost infinitely in the Boston Fleet community about balancing out your defensive pairings and having that those groupings where the left-handed, right-handed pairings buys you 1.5 to 2 extra seconds of possession on zone exits in a professional hockey ecosystem. And that's just such an important thing when you're playing against teams like Montreal or teams like Toronto or Minnesota, any of those high-skill, high-speed, physical, forechecking teams. So having Terralova really sliding in with Kayla Barnes this year, I think, does a lot of good for Seattle in their first season. You're going to have a strong, left side defender in Terralova, who's very experienced, has offensive puck moving capability, which is something that can't be said for every defender in the league. And Kayla Barnes, who is unbelievably dynamic with the puck on her tape, and that's something that to me is really key for both player and team here, that I love to see. Trying to Hannah Bilka confirmed to Seattle as well. That is obviously a significant pickup for Seattle. It's a significant departure for Boston. Boston's really going to be in a spot now where they're going to have to really determine whether or not they're able to create offense. They're going to have to get a little bit more creative, and that's going to be critical. In an unsurprising turn of events, Boston's fourth protection is also in, where they will be protecting Shea Maloney from the looks of things, which is somebody who watched pretty much every Fleet game last year. With the protection of Alina Mueller, assuming Boston's coaching staff figures out how to not suck this year, be really good. If Courtney Kessel can figure out her rostering, realistically, Alina Mueller is their 1C and Shea Maloney as their 2C. I think that there is a foundation for this to be a good team. If they can re-sign Susanna Tapany, and really just find ways to better utilize the players they have, like Sophie Shirley, Lexia Gia. I think they'd be able to be pretty good, or at least not as bad as it could be. That's kind of the thought there. What's interesting, especially for Hannah Bilka, is this is going to reunite her with a college teammate, if I recall correctly, in Kayla Barnes, that Ohio State connection, which makes things a little bit interesting, really, in the sense that there are some players that I think are going to float around the second round in this draft, where I think that in the draft later this month in June, I think this kind of opens the door for a Jenna Boglione or a McKenna Webster to potentially go to Seattle, just because of the Ohio State connection and the chemistry, to really ease the transition of a rookie player like that. Just pending the next Vancouver selection. There are so many directions that Vancouver can go right here. I think a left-handed D could be on the table here for Vancouver. Not really sure who it would be at this point in time. And the pick is in. So picks 4 and 5, I believe. Interesting. Brooke McQuigg and Abby Boreen. Excellent pair of selections from them. For Minnesota, this is a tough one. In general. I don't think the average person, and we've put out our we've put out our the PWHL draft model with our P60s, and such a key part of where's my train of thought? I apologize. So, something I alluded to, Brooke McQuigg, despite being deployed in more of a third-line role for Minnesota last year, one of the biggest pieces for McQuigg going to Vancouver is that she was a top 15 player in the PWHL this season in terms of P60, with a points per 60 minutes of ice time of 2.39, with a PPG of 0.52. Why I mention all of this and where my relevancy point is Brooke McQuigg had an identical, almost, P60 to Minnesota's fourth protection, which is Britta Curl. However, despite playing in significantly less ice time, Brooke McQuigg, had a P60 of almost a half point higher, playing with a strong OFD tandem of Jakes and Thompson, McQuigg could be a tremendous addition for Vancouver with the D-core that they have set up. And for anybody that follows me on X, I recently had a statement about Tessa Bonham being particularly maybe a little bit disrespectful during the start of this event, in the sense of saying Abby Boreen underperformed this year in Montreal, which is kind of crazy that we're talking about somebody who had a PPG of 0.47, which once again is within 10% of Britta Curl equal output, and had a almost identical P60 to, once again, Minnesota's fourth protection, Britta Curl. So, there's a lot of, I think, conversation about Curl and how good she is, but now we're looking at players who, in a vacuum, statistically, are similar and comparable. Boreen's depth being gone for Montreal makes it a little bit more difficult for them heading into the next season, obviously. But again, they run three lines most of the time with their coaching staff. They're able to coach really well, score very well, goaltend very well with most of their core coming back. So it's a tough loss for sure for really tough loss in Boreen not being available next year for Montreal. However, fair enough to say that I think they can survive that loss. And now they're down to a situation where they're only able to lose one more player. Toronto is still kind of sitting here. So that's an interesting thing. Also of important note, I think, at this point is that despite how good Toronto's roster is, they haven't really selected anybody or seen anybody depart yet. So they've been far and away the most pessimistic fan base really over the course of this expansion draft process period. And, for a team whose fans were so pessimistic, they haven't really been bitten the same way that everybody else has at this point, with Seattle's picks now coming in. Jesse Eldridge, great pickup. Yes, the kiss of death, Julia Gosling, goes for Toronto. The Eldridge pickup is so key, so critical for Seattle. It's unbelievable that they were able to have have her available, a player with a 2.57 P60, which is good enough for 8th in the league, meaning that they now have picked up the 6th and 8th highest scoring efficiency players in the entire PWHL in this draft period, which is wild that Boston and New York allowed that to happen. Jesse Eldridge is just phenomenal player. She's going to do great work for New York, and a big challenge for New York is going to be filling not only Alex Carpenter's hole that has been left by her going, but now losing Jesse Eldridge is very difficult. Again, New York, they are going to have the first overall pick, if I recall correctly, if that has been confirmed through the Golden Plan. They're going to get a great player in there. Big fan of that for them. Julia Gosling, first-round pick for the Toronto Scepters last year. Never really found her groove in Toronto. But to be fair to her, as in terms of P60 versus points per game, she had 10 points in 30 games last year, which was on the lower side of the league, probably closer to the 40th percentile. However, where things get interesting of her ceiling, when you look at relative players in a P60 environment, is one, a player who got a lot of love earlier in the pre-show for the expansion draft. She had a better P60 than Grace Zumwinkle out in Minnesota, and she was within, probably statistically, she was within 10% in P60 of Boston Susanna Tapani. So there's definitely a ceiling where Julia Gosling's going to be able to be a great player as a member of the PWHL Seattle ecosystem, alongside Eldridge. That's a duo you could see together. A power play that's going to be fantastic to watch. Really, just a pair of great picks. Toronto, in all fairness, I don't know if they're going to be able to get a player who's going to be able to fill the role of Julia Gosling. But depending on how the rest of this draft shakes out tonight, and the players they retain and the players they're able to re-sign, as well as, the entry draft in a couple of weeks, Toronto may very comfortably be able to kind of fill those minutes. If Izzy Daniels sticks around for another year, that's another player that they can keep and really develop in their system. Sorry about that. Some quick discussion on who the fourth protection would be for Toronto. Interesting that the team on the panel speaks to protecting Megan Carter. Not confirmed, just Tessa Bonham's current musing. I don't really think that that's a great decision, potentially. Solely on account of the fact that, Megan Carter was 5th from the bottom of the league in P60. Emma Malte getting the protection is a great decision. Another player who's more towards the 50th percentile in scoring efficiency in the league, if not the 40th percentile. However, strong penalty killer, great physical presence for Toronto. Kind of one of those players who I think has the ability to move up in the lineup, really fill the void kind of left behind by Sarah Nurse and Julia Gosling. And I think that's going to be really critical for them. I apologize for the delay as my brain is trying to figure out what pick we are on in this current draft. I think the Ice Garden probably has a good article in case anybody wants some written content. I do not have any written content, but following along with the Ice Garden over on X, they've been super, super valuable, super helpful. Yep, so we're on pick 8 now. We're halfway in. Kind of waiting to see what Vancouver's going to do at this point. A good point from Bonham just now. Toronto's going to be able to be successful. They don't need, as many superstars. They can make their own stars. I mean, that's what they've done. If they're able to re-sign Hannah Miller, they're able to re-sign Jessie Comfer. If they're able to re-sign Natalie Spooner, they'll be fine. And now Vancouver, after my monologue, has picks 8 and 9 in. I wonder if one of Vancouver's next selections could be either Dominique Petrie, potentially, maybe a Sophie Shirley. Kind of curious to see if they're going to go with Tessa Bonham's logic and target a kind of skilled forward. I do also wonder if Vancouver might look at another defender here. Wow. Wow. Izzy Daniel and Gabby Rosenthal are on their way to Vancouver. Yeah, I think this is something that Izzy Daniel really, really needed after a difficult start to her career as a member of the Toronto Scepters. After being an absolute fucking unit at Cornell for, her last 3 years, one of the most offensively gifted prospects in last year's draft, who had a drop in her slide, but there's going to be opportunities for her this year with her skill set and her playmaking, where playing with any combination of Alex Carpenter, Hillary Knight, Jesse Eldridge, that's kind of gross, and she's going to have a great opportunity here to be the player that at least I think she could be based on what I saw from her in college. So I love this for her. Again, for Toronto, this is somebody they used in a bottom six role, somebody who they didn't necessarily see as a key part of their offensive future. And, that's okay for them. Daniel is still a 1.09 points per 60 player. With more ice time, with more opportunity, could bring that number up. And a reminder, she's going to play alongside Danielle Serdachny, who also had, a P60 that you probably didn't expect based on where she went in the draft. Conversely, Gabby Rosenthal comes in solid third-line presence. 4 points in 29 games last year, a .64 P60. Ultimately, it's just great for Seattle's ability. And, that one, I think it's tough for New York on the sense that, you're losing a glue player, you're losing a solid bottom six player if you're the New York Sirens. But at the same time, you can get a little bit younger there. You can look for a player in, the third, fourth, fifth round, a name I've brought up who maybe isn't around in the second round, but, maybe an Abby Hustler. Maybe they get lucky and, Jenna Buglione's still there in the draft in the second round. There's definitely a chance that, New York is able to unlock that. But also, Rosenthal was a strong performer in her draft year at Ohio State. A player who, just like Izzy Daniel to some extent, just like Julia Gosling, maybe the opportunity of playing in, a middle six role with some of the players that, Vancouver. I lost my train of thought there big time. For Vancouver, the opportunity for Gabby Rosenthal and Izzy Daniel to play with some of the players that they have and the decor that they have is so tremendous. Jen Gardner and Gabby Rosenthal had a great connection during their time at Ohio State. And that's something that I think they're really going to lean on and look to in 2025-26. Now that I've gotten my train of thought back, Seattle is on the clock. So apologies there as I got derailed on my perception of the future line mates of Izzy Daniel and Gabby Rosenthal. Just two players who are going to get a great chance to play with some stars and some opportunity. I am curious. Seattle, I think, is going to probably go potentially with a pair of defenders here. Another right-handed D is essential. A left-handed D is also pretty critical here. If I'm going to go two defenders, I wonder if it's going to potentially be Savannah Harmon and Sydney Bard. I don't know. That's best guess. Anna Wilgren. Megan Carter. Interesting. Anna Wilgren, ultimately 50th percentile type defender, really good player, really good mobility, great left-handed 25-year-old defender. Wilgren's going to do really well there. Megan Carter joins the fray as well. What I don't love about this pickup is, Megan Carter as a left-handed defender, Wilgren as a left-handed defender on this roster. Not having a right-handed player in the early going here definitely kind of exposes them a little bit. One of the biggest challenges for Megan Carter as a left-handed defender is, if she ends up having to play on her weak side. Same with Wilgren, the speed of opposing forecheckers can do so much damage on the wall. We see it whenever the Boston Fleet get hemmed in. Just really one of those things that I wish teams really were considering here. And again, at the collegiate ice hockey level, which is where Kara Gardner, Maury Vancouver, and, Megan Turner, it's kind of got some of Danielle Marmer's fingerprints on this heavy left-handed duo, and it's not the most inspiring thing to see, but it is great to see a Northeastern product go out there. But it is not shocking to me that the AGM for Boston went to Seattle and decided that we're going to do weak side D configuration, like we didn't learn our lesson the last 2 years in Boston. But again, Anna Wilgren also, Montreal's going to be able to plug that gap, plug that hole a little bit, and now they're also done. For Toronto, they can get more mobile on their back end. To lose Megan Keller out of this group, on a team that defensively isn't poor to begin with, and she had some, lost time due to injury last year. Ultimately, Toronto and Montreal's ability to survive both of these losses is pretty reasonable. Really great for everybody involved. Vancouver's next picks, not sure what direction they're going to go with. Could be a defender or two, could be a forward or two. Minnesota still has an availability here. Boston still got 2 availabilities. So I'm really curious to see. There's got to be a Fleet player going at this pick. I wonder, with the remaining picks, I think being 2 Fleet and a Scepter, or 2 Fleet, a Scepter, I think a Frost. Yeah. I'm losing count, I'm losing track. It's all good, it's all gray. Yeah. Interesting. Vancouver. Let's see. Vancouver's pick is in. Super curious to see what they're going to do here. Oh, Denisa Shizhova from Minnesota. And with that, Sydney Bard goes to Vancouver. My heart is completely broken. As my favorite Fleet player is now headed out west. A great pickup though. Really needed a right-handed defender. Sorry, I had to collect my thoughts there. Bard's going to get an opportunity in Seattle, Vancouver, really to play with Sophie Jakes, and I really look forward to that in the sense that, we saw Courtney Kessel's incompetence as a coach lead to Sophie Jakes having 0 points in a Fleet jersey or a Boston jersey and going on to be a superstar in Minnesota, and she's going to carry that success over to Vancouver. Sydney Bard, elite first step, great hockey IQ, brilliant hockey sense, never got a great opportunity with the Fleet with her deployments. Her being on a team that's going to let her actually do what she does best is going to be incredible for her career. I think this just made Sydney Morin probably the most valuable free agent, as Boston can't afford to have one right-handed defender. Denisa Shishova, she is great. Denisa Shishova, solid middle six player, tenured, exceptional. Wow. I was prepared for a Sydney Bard. Wow. For Boston, that is going to open up a spot for Hadley Hartmetz to come up the lineup. It also, however, depending on how the draft order shakes out, Boston is kind of at the mercy of everybody else at this point. I would have thought that jam. It's going to open the gap for Boston to potentially go out and get Haley Wynn and plug her in as their top pairing right-handed D if the draft works out in their favor. Crazy. I believe there's one pick left in the draft. I do wonder what Seattle's going to do here. Yeah. Really curious what this pick is going to be. Interesting. This is definitely very curious. I wonder what they're gonna do here to end out the draft. Crazy how I think Boston's the last team, so this could be conceivably anyone. And Boston doesn't have a goalie on their roster right now besides Frankel, so this is gonna be somebody. I'm... Picks in. Well, to our boy Krakus watching at home, you and I are sad together as Emily Brown is packing up her bags and heading out west. Boston's defense got absolutely shelled. And, that's that. This has been a fun adventure with y'all on the live stream. I'll see you soon. I'll have my 2025 PWHL draft primer out this week with my final rankings. And yeah.